Tassin does say, with all due respect, Empress, as much as this man has admitted to things that we accused him of, it would appear that he is not the only guilty party. And until we can parse out exactly which of those, accusations belong to which of them, and where and how that guilt should be applied, I do think the option of, I don't know about forestalling, but perhaps death with the possibility of undoing it is a fair verdict.
He says, it's sort of why I've structured it this way. Because it puts myself in the hands of you, Empress. When I said that I thought you had done an excellent job running this country, I meant that as well. You can choose to believe that or not, that's at your discretion, but I'm doing this because at that point, it'll be your decision. If you follow through on this, I won't be able to stop you. I'll be dead. My hope is that I'll be brought back with a chance to right at least some of the wrongs that have happened, either at my own hand or at my other own hand. But you would have the option of not doing it if you thought that with the benefit of time, or seeing what exactly it is I have in my workshop, or seeing how the world reacts the first week without me present, or what he does if he does come back in that time, that I'm better off staying dead. That's your decision. And the Empress is just kind of like taking this all in. She's been quiet since she opened with those first questions that she asked. She looks over at Cavis. She says, and she's kind of shaking her head, she's like, I honestly don't know what to think. What about you, my most trusted advisor? What do you make of all this? And he's still just staring straight at Faust. He has not left him the whole time. He says, it pains me to admit it, but parts of this do match up. When some of my crusaders were looking into some of the incidents on the eastern part of the continent, they talked about how they weren't confident that the timing overlapped correctly, that they weren't sure if Faust had been there as he had said he was. And as he continues to stare at Faust, he says, that was sort of why you were making these business trips more known more recently, isn't it? You were doing that on purpose, right? And Faust goes, that's right. That's why they call you the Vigilant, isn't it? Yes, it was sort of a way to cover my own tracks, to at least make it so that I couldn't be in certain places at certain times. If I was at home, it was all too easy for me to be elsewhere if no one else could verify that I was at home. But when I was out on business, it sort of at least limited the options of somebody else posing as me if I could state that I was in front of a crowd of other people elsewhere. It's my latest attempt to sort of hamper his movement in the last couple of months. Going on 6 months now, I suppose. But yes, that was the intent behind it. Cavis says, it does sort of fit, Empress. Ultimately, it's your decision. I can advise you as best I'm able, but to kill a man and bring him back to life is no small undertaking. And to trust that what he's telling us is true without a whole lot of ways to verify it is a difficult measure, to be sure.
It's also based on an incredible amount of assumptions, as I'm sure you've already parsed together. We're supposed to believe, as it's fact nearly, to hear my father say it, that the other Faust will come here, see that this one is removed from the board, and make a mistake? Sure, maybe. Or maybe he sees that his only obstacle is gone and it accelerates his timeline.
It's nice that you think of me as being that powerful, but I alone would not be enough to stop him, nor would my removal be enough to spur him into action. There are still far too many powerful mages, the Empress included, that surround her for that to be viable. He would have to come in much more significant force than that, to the point where, even if I were still alive, I don't know if it would make a difference.
It's just a big gamble to think that he'll just make a mistake.
Well, Isaac, don't underestimate the power of a little mystery. The fact of the matter is that he'll return and this other him will be gone. And he can't be entirely sure what anyone else knows, what was divulged, or what happened. Even if we make it public, he'll know that that's just the public side of it. If he wasn't there to see it, he might even believe it was an illusion of some kind, and maybe he was killed a different way. The less he knows, the more mistakes he could potentially make. You can't play a game to the best of your ability if you can't see what your opponent did.
Sure, but you're playing on risks and assumptions and taking away the knowns. And the known quantity is if he could spend that time actually working with us for once, that could be a benefit. That's a thing that we know for sure.
To do what? To build weapons? What will you have me do if I'm alive? Are we going to build an army? Outfit them with weapons like this mana cannon to stop him? Is that the intent?
I don't think so. When I say research, I'm not saying more weapons. You said yourself, you don't think we can build anything to stop him anyway.
So then what? Because one of the things I have tried, to be fair, is to figure out how to gain access to this other plane, to solve what it is that he has that I don't. And I've read countless hours, thousands of books, any research I could find to see if I could figure that out. I would have loved to have questioned your friend on it, but what I didn't tell you that day when you asked where she had gone was I suspect she was removed on purpose. If it's as you described to me, she blurs the lines between these worlds in a way that other people with magical abilities do not. So what went haywire that day might also have been his design. You might have actually been close to something, but I don't know what that was. And not having a chance to question your friend who unfortunately has gone missing, I fear we've hit a brick wall there as well.
We still have the necklace, yeah. It's on our side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have it in the bag of holding.
I'm sorry, Faust. I didn't know that you questioned her parents and studied the bloodline, see if there was any samples that were worth anything. I didn't realize that she studied the necklace that we had from her that seems to bridge the gap between dimensions in itself and almost took Tessian. I didn't know that you already had access to all these things.
You are still being sarcastic with me in a time when I'm honestly trying to help. Why on earth would I abandon my plan to work with you if you're going to act like a petulant child?
I agree, Faust. Isaac, please.
My point, I'm sorry, we're all so serious. My point is, you have not done everything. You have not studied everything. For once, you don't have all the information. So yes, I will be sarcastic to make my point, just like you will lash out and lose your cool. This is what makes us people.
You said a week, Faust, for a public execution.
Yes.
Correct?
And then I'll be happy to assist you with research in any way I can. But I think completing the Conatus is too important to be put off for now, and the best way to do that is to take me off the board temporarily. You have yet to disprove that notion.
Because you can't prove the notion either. That is a fallacy from the very beginning. I can't prove that there's not something on the other side of the sun. That doesn't mean that there is, and we've lost our argument. It means the very foundation of what you're trying to say is nothing.
In this week that you have, Faust, would it be possible to research some things that we can give you? Could you help try to bridge the gap to help give us a leg up when we return from the Conatus?
He nods. He says, you would have to bring them to me. I couldn't leave captivity whether or not the Empress agreed to this ruse. If she was going to execute me by normal means, I wouldn't be allowed to leave, but even if we are to keep up this farce, then yes, you could bring me things and I could look at them, go over them, work with you. Sure.
Isaac, does that sound like a good enough middle ground?
I mean, in a way, but he's just proving my point. If
the
he
thing you're not
researches
understanding
something,
is I think he's close to making a move. His appearances have been ramping up more recently. And what worries me is that you've seen the blueprints. You know the ship that was constructed. You know its capabilities. If that has been finished, and I have reason to believe it has, I think that is the first step of some kind of war on this country, an incursion from their dimension to ours. My hope is that by taking myself out of play, it throws him off long enough for you to complete the Chronatus, add those additional magical abilities to our disposal as things that we can use, perhaps find answers there that might bridge the gap as well, and then bring me back so that I can assist you with all this research you so love. Because right now, I'm a known commodity as is. Could I potentially stop him? Lord knows I've been trying. But if he comes here, and it's been happening, gosh, almost weekly at this point. If he comes and I'm not there, that should make him hesitate. He'll have to find out why. We spend that time to find out I've been executed. What does that mean? Why would they have brought him to trial for things I've done? Can I feel comfortable? How do I alter my plans? Who do I consult with? How do I push back a date where I might be coming here?
Yes, every moment that he has to contemplate what happened and look into it is a moment he's not working towards his current plan. I agree with you on this, Faust.
I mean, I'm sort of amazed. I'm asking for my head to be cut off. And it's almost as though that were nothing.
No, I don't want your head cut off. Is that not clear? Did I not establish that? I don't want you dead.
If we're going to save Hermia, we need to have all cards on the table, including your father's head.
We need to make the best bets, not wild gambits like this. Correct me if I'm wrong. This scroll, is this an exact science? Or you act like it's pushing a button or pulling a trigger.
It really is that simple, yes, for those who are gifted enough to use it, and the Empress is one such person. It's not a question of if I can be brought back, it's a question of whether or not she would seem it willing, but there will be no difficulty in doing so if she deems that to be an appropriate course of action. Magic is actually one of the simplest things in the world once you understand more of it. And I would bet even your young friend, Mr. Tessian here, understands that to some extent. There are certain rules that guide it. There are principles behind it. There are certainties to it. Now, the uses, the applications, the type of person who has those tools at their disposal can make for unknown factors, but magic is magic. Spells do certain things.
I'm surprised in your steadfastness on this plan. You have failed to get ahead of him for, what was it? How many years? How many decades has he had the leg up on you? None of your plans have worked. Nothing you've done has been successful. You're so unwilling even then to try a different perspective?
Probably, yes. Because you haven't offered a different perspective other than research for a while and cross our fingers, and that's time I don't think we have.
No, it's trying. It's trying something else. You can't be so thick-headed that you don't see that.
I will be happy to try anything once you finish the goddamn Chronatus.
Empress, at the end of the day, most of this will, well, be up to you, unless my friend here decides to pull something questionable. What are your thoughts on this?
She sort of sighs to herself. She says, to some extent, I am with Isaac on this. It seems very cavalier with your own life to trust it in my hands. Even if I think that your assessment of my character is fair, I've always tried to do right by my people, but are you certain about this? As certain as one can be? I find myself questioning it as well. It seems not like you, from what I've understood of you at least. Faust kind of takes a second to compose himself again because he's getting, super into it. He says, in addition to the resonance that I feel when he enters this plane, I suspect that the combination of magic and technology he has allows him to keep track of my whereabouts and my dealings without me noticing. Some sort of combination of scrying, a magic I know you're familiar with as well, but not having a target who can assess that it's happening to them. And of course, being as familiar with magic as you are, Empress, you know that the more familiar you are with the target, the easier it is to spy on them. Well, guess what? It turns out that if you are the target, you have an exceptional advantage. It seems that it not only shields his ability to spy on me, but my ability to try to track him. I've tried to then use that to my advantage, to see if I could figure out where he was headed, what he was up to, what his thoughts were. A few different types of spells of that nature. And every time it's been shielded by something that doesn't feel magical in nature. So, to be frank, yes. This is the one way to change the status quo. The one way to make him have to stop and reassess the situation. It's possible that he's already been so attuned to my plans because he's been spying on me every day? Multiple times a day? Whenever he's here? And the only way I can stop that is if I'm unable to be scryed upon.
Couldn't have even known this was your plan? If he can scry on you, he could be reading your thoughts, correct?
Which is why I haven't told anyone of this until we got into this room with this particular level of magical shielding.
Sure, but you've thought it. Can you guarantee he can't read your thoughts?
Well, I haven't felt him for several days, so he shouldn't be in this dimension. If he is, he shouldn't be able to access this building because of the protections in place. So I can't say with 100% confidence given the unknowns here, but call it a nice 97%.
My point is, unless you've just hatched this plan in the last 3 days, he could have already been planning for this. He could be ready for the contingency that...
But he can't, Isaac, because even if he knows that he plans to tell us, he can't know what we've said here unless your father continues to live. And he can't know what we're doing because we are not your father. We are the wild cards in this scenario. We are the unknown. He can't know what we're going to do, even if he knew the entire plan.
My point is, if he can read my father's thoughts, this was ruined from the get-go, because this was part of my father's plan. Everything that we're doing is part of his plan. In fact, to your point, the only way to throw a wrench into this now is to go off-plan.
Yes, but going off-plan isn't keeping him alive where his thoughts can be pried again.
Also, I was not foolish enough to start hatching this plan in times when he was present in our dimension. You have to give me at least a little bit of credit here.
I'm going to lean into Lena during all of this and just say, I may kill him just to get the two of them to shut up.
That's fair.
And I just
He's still a smug asshole. He can't help himself.
put up a hand and I say, I know it's frustrating, but it's necessary that we think of every possible scenario.
Look, I will even give you another concession. Not that I'm really in the position to be making demands, but just as part of the discourse. If the Empress decides to bring me back, I will be at her, but also your, and he's gesturing to the group, disposal. There's a particular way you want to direct me, some line of research or inquisition you want me to pursue. I will shrug my shoulders and do it. I will no longer pursue my own ends. But only after we have done this and bought enough time for young Lena to complete her journey.
Mr. Dryden, does this mean there is another Lena and another Cornetus as well?
It is possible, yes. You're asking the right questions. I wish I had more answers. I wish I knew more about this other place, but my suspicion is it mirrors our world in a lot of ways, just with differences. Now, I don't know how stark those differences might be. They could be small, they could be abundant, but from what I've heard and read and learned from my time trying to look more into this, there have been a couple of other occasions when people have come from one world to the other, and in some cases, there's been another version of themselves in that other world. Now, what that means, do they have that same connection that we seem to? I don't know. I don't know if that's only because we're more magically gifted than the regular folks who might have attempted that before or been forced into it, but it is possible, yes. There could be versions of all of us over there. There could be people with their own versions of themselves who do different things or are similar. I don't really know for sure, but it is a possibility, yes.
It's hard to believe. What would it, and I mean that literally, what would the point of divergence be in the two realities to where the realm is different, but we all have our own version there? Let's say you're walking down the street, Karash, and you see a sexy young dragonborn and you hit it off. In the other dimension, maybe you never saw her. And so you went with somebody else. That means your kids are different and their kids are different. Highly unlikely is all I'm saying.
I think it is safe to assume that sometime around the Manicanon and the war, to Isaac's point, too many variables happen in life for these sorts of things to simply align. Thus, it would make sense that such an event and, well, it may very well ripple across planier realities, the sheer power of it. And to Faust's point, it would have marked a distinct event where technology either continued or ceased, while still allowing a Faust Dryden to have been born, rose to power, learn magic, and take advantage of it.
Could be.
The magical item you had in your basement that makes everyone calm, why do you have that?
That was sort of a test subject, if you will, something to pull attention, as we talked about earlier. It was with a benign effect that just sort of made it so that people were a little bit happier to live in Timberbrook, and that was about the extent of it. It was primarily there just to see how big of a radius I could make and how noticeable it would be if I was trying to sense it from other locations. I tested it in some of my travels to see if I could pick up on it from across the continent and the like.
Empress, if you're set, whatever decision you make, and whether that is we try our own plan or we're set on continuing to be pieces on his board when he's not even alive anymore, I will, of course, leave that to you. But I don't support it. With that said, if you want more insurance that what he's saying is true to make it more likely to bring him back, we should have me do it. If I kill him, I get his memories. I can verify if what he's saying is true or if there's some things he's not telling us.
Faust kind of considers this for a second. He says, "It's not a bad idea."
I agree with Isaac.
At this point, I don't know if I have anything left to hide, but sure. You should be warned that it might be too much for you.
That's not my first rodeo. Don't worry about it.
It's your first rodeo with someone of my capabilities.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be able to handle it just fine.
You weren't the last time.
Yeah, well,
I will also say that if, given everything that has happened in the trial today and the very public announcement of what the gun is capable of, a public execution at your hands, Isaac, would paint quite the target on your back, as the only one who would know what your father knows is now you, and thus us, which may impede the conatus.
The Empress says, "Well, if you're going to go all in on this, Faust, there is another way. We have the very public execution. We have you killed in front of everyone else, that there are plenty of witnesses. And then we very quickly bring you back to life once they're escorted off the premises. And then we kill you a second time. It's rather unpleasant, but it does serve both needs." And Faust is kind of taken aback by this. He's kind of like, coming from you?
I am sure a priest of court would be willing to assist in this matter.
And the Emperor says, yes, we could have people on hand who could do it, especially if it's done quickly after it's happened. It's even easier than having to wait. The magic to do so after time has passed is much more elaborate and difficult than it is to do it after it's just happened. That would actually not be a trifling matter. Or it would be a trifling matter. It'd be easy to do. but it would also be rather painful on more than one occasion.
Yeah, what's the limit to this? How many times we can bring someone back from the dead? It's like a 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. It can't just happen in perpetuity.
She says, no, it takes considerable resources to do it as well. It takes generally some kind of rare gemstone or something valuable of that effect to do so. So it can't just be done on a whim. Otherwise, we could bring back the families of anybody who ever suffered misfortune, but unfortunately, it's not that simple. But to something this important, it could be done. We certainly have the resources for it.
I think that's perhaps the best middle ground. If you would like to continue your father's research, Isaac, simply take what he knows already.
I don't like it, but the biggest proponent for it is him, so what do I have to say? Lena, what do you think?
I don't even know where to begin. My biggest concern, though, is that your plan hinges on us completing the Conatus in a week or 2? How often has this other you been coming and going recently? How
Feels
much
like
time do we have?
It's relatively sporadic, but it feels like every 7 to 10 days, thereabouts. I do think, for what it's worth, that there's some sort of catch to it. Like, he can't remain here for very long because he doesn't belong here, or... I don't know. I wish I could test it by going to the other place and seeing what effects it had on me, but I suspect he's never been able to stay for very long, as far as I can tell. So it's almost as though this world is rejecting him somehow, and that's why he has to leave and come back frequently, as opposed to staying and carrying it out whatever it is he intends to do. But it's been around that frequent lately.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, I don't think we necessarily have to finish the Conatus in a week, correct?
It'd be nice to finish it as soon as you can.
I know we were throwing around a week. I didn't think we meant for the entire Conatus, of which we've almost just begun.
We would most likely need some assistance transportation-wise, Your Highness, at least if we do wish to do it as quickly as possible.
She nods. She says, well, that can be arranged pretty easily. You've already had access to one of the ways where we could do that, but if you can suss out future locations more precisely, we might even be able to do it more directly than just the nearest city. There are some options at our disposal here, depending on how familiar you are with the next step of the journey.
Tessin kind of looks to Lena. It seems that at best we need to be close in order to sort of divine the next direction. The closer we are, the more direct it is. But it is no exact science, if I am correct.
The feeling gets stronger the closer we are, but we have to be traveling in the right direction first. I have to have an idea of where the next location even is before we can travel. It's not something I can rush, but...
The Empress's brow kind of furrows. She says, and you can see she's like in thought. She says, so what if we went to the vault and procured some items to teleport back? So you, if I'm understanding this correctly, you can sort of sense close to where it is, or at least thereabouts. So we have you use the city's transportation halls to get to the closest place possible, find it, and then give you a means to get back quickly once you're finished, where you don't even have to leave the area.
Would certainly expedite things.
How long does it take you, once you're there at these locations? You've told me a little of your journey, but how long does it take you once you're there to complete part of this journey?
I think it's taken, like a few hours? Several hours? It's just like a day for the actual shrine itself.
Mm-hmm. A couple hours at most once we've reached it, but sometimes the journey there is in and of itself part of the trial. Thus, it's not necessarily something that we can teleport to directly. I suspect there's a number of geographical and magical limitations in order to keep just anyone from wandering into it. We've seen some of these things close and in person. And from what we've been told, sometimes something as simple as traversing the local climate is, in and of itself, the trial, and the rest of it, more acknowledgement of that.
I suppose this sort of keeps in the spirit of it then. This version of it, if it's to a nearby location, but you still have to make your way there, I wouldn't think violate the idea behind the journey to begin with, as opposed to trying to get an exact location and teleport you into it, which does feel like it's missing something. With the resources here, I mean, we can devote it to you. It seems like it's important. It might just work.
For what it's worth, there also seems to be a hot spot or some such thing located in the cities in Falstock, sewers in Falstock. When Grail was there was a gold shimmering images that she saw that at the time we thought was of a different time period, and maybe it was of a different plane altogether. Might be worth exploring.
If you still have memory of where that was and can direct us, we could send some people out to take a look at it as well.
I think we could draw you a map. We visited it a few times.
Faust is kind of interested by that part of it. He says, What did you see when you experienced this phenomenon?
Yeah, like I said, you don't know everything already.
Well, it was of two women running with a child, and then the sewer itself, the appearance changed. Like the bricks, it was like looked newer. Does that make sense? Like it. What am I trying to say?
We thought we were looking into an older time when things had still been more recently built, and some past tragedy, I believe. The women seemed quite distressed. I will say that the general sense of distress is something that has occurred in what little we have seen of this potential other side. I myself received, albeit a great effort on my own, and after much struggle, glimpses of some of the same or similar visions that our friend Grail had before she was taken. Strife, war, struggle seems to be something of a through line between all of it. I don't know exactly what's going on that side, or if what we're even seeing is there or visions of here, but it was nothing good.
Could you interact with it in any way? Could you speak to the people there that you saw? Could you touch anything?
No, we weren't able to interact with it. It was like it was a preordained scene that was playing out in front of us. We had no control, and we could only see it when Grail was with us.
It was something of an illusion, but it did react to Grail's presence.
Faust seems to be kind of mulling this over. He says, I had wondered if perhaps this was something of a dystopia on the other side. If there was reason to want so desperately to come here instead in some way. I wonder if that's along those same lines.
Then our hypotheses are the same.